Naperville, welcome back to Real Talk. I'm Chris Grano, your host. Today is our first monthly market update. So some of you who followed the Naperville Real Estate Weekly Market Update in the past, we have now folded that podcast into this new one, and we're going to bring you a monthly market update once a month to give you a snapshot on what's happening in the real estate market, Naperville and Greater Chicagoland. So stick around. That is what's next.
This is the city we call our own. These are the stories of the people we call our neighbors. This is the heartbeat of our hometown. Naperville, this is Real Talk.
Hey, welcome back to Real Talk. My name is Chris Grano once again, and my co-host today, welcome back, Mr. Todd Gosden of Compass Mortgage. Todd, how you doing?
Good. How's everybody doing today? Hopefully everybody's enjoying the warmth coming back to us.
Ooh, I'm telling you, I love it. My son was like, my son didn't want to wear like anything. I was going to wear a t-shirt, Dad. How about we put a light jacket on, buddy? Okay.
Exactly.
So, oh man, I'm excited to be back with the update. We kind of, we knew we were retooling the podcast, so we kind of ended off near the end of last year, and we're back now. And really, the spring market is underway. Would you agree with that?
Oh yeah. Yes, it feels like it's come early this year, just a little bit, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I think everybody wants to know. I mean, when I'm talking with buyers and sellers right now, everybody wants to know what's going on. They're asking me about interest rates. They're asking me about inflation. They're asking me about, in the last week, the war in Russia and Ukraine. So everybody wants to know, how does this affect, my real estate world? I mean, it's a reality. It's the economy that we're dealing with in our own lives, and we want to know, how is that going to affect everything. So, Todd, we're going to do what we usually do. We're going to talk over some statistics to give people an idea of what's going on in the Naperville market, and I'm going to ask you a question. We're going to kind of go through. Last night was the State of the Union. As we're recording this, today is March 2nd. Last night was the State of the Union address. We're going to do the State of the Market address. So, no booing, no cheering. I think we can pull it off. Does that sound good?
That sounds wonderful.
All right. I'm going to share my screen actually for a second here, so we can take a look at some stats. Kind of try to give people an idea, of what's happening and how it shifts from month to month. All right. So right now, what I've got pulled up here is Naperville and the Greater Chicagoland area. And the first thing I want to focus on is sales price. So we're going to look back over the last 1 year, and we're going to do an average of 3 months going back. So at all price points, we have a 15% increase in 1 year in the average sales part, the median sales point in Naperville. In the Greater Chicagoland area, that's 12.7. So you can see that Naperville's outperforming the region as a whole. And if we go back 3 years, you can see where that was. It was actually pretty static, right? From 2019 all the way through sort of the end of 2020. And it's these last 2 years when it has really risen. So again, if you're shopping, things are certainly a little bit more expensive this year than they were last year. So, and people ask me, I'm sure they ask you this too, Todd, what are prices going to do? Well, if I had a crystal ball, I'd be a billionaire, but they're probably not going to go down. Would you agree with that? At least over the next 3 to 6, 12 months.
Well, I don't actually know how they could go down, knowing that we have a shortage of housing and we have more buyers and we know what to do with.
Yeah.
Right? So it's not probable.
No, agreed. And if you talk to any economists, again, things don't turn around that quickly.
Right.
So when people say things like, well, we're experiencing inflation. Yeah, we are. And, and if that continues, and if rates rise, certainly things will adjust, but the real estate market does not turn on a dime, whereas the stock market, sure, it could fall, by a third tomorrow. That doesn't happen in real estate. It lags behind. It takes more time to adjust. So that's pricing. Okay. So let's look at supply. So if you remember in the podcast before, month supply of inventory is the metric that we use to determine how quickly things are selling. Okay, so how quickly do things come to the market, and then how quickly are they bought up by buyers? So the month supply of inventory across all price ranges in Naperville, if you go back 1 year ago, we were at 3.0, or in February, we were at 2.8. Okay. So that's still a pretty strong seller's market. If you look at where we're at right now in Naperville, it's 1.1. So much low. It's down. If you look at the metric on the side here, down 60%. In the greater Chicagoland market, it's down 44%. So, and if you just look at new listings, okay, so that's listings that are coming to the market, each month, and this is a 3-month average. That's down again 45% from a year ago in Naperville. So it is down. There's no denying that. And so how do we react to it? How do we win? That's a whole nother discussion, but you need to understand, where things are at, right?
Right.
And it's making these conversations, Todd, that you and I have so much more important than ever. They were always very important, but I tell you, for the buyers right now who call me up and just want to go look at a house and they don't want to talk about the state of the market, they don't want to talk about how their situation, what their story is and how it fits into what's happening. I have to say, I'm so sorry. We have to slow down just a little bit. We have to have these conversations because you're going to have a terrible experience if we don't prepare for this type of market. Would you agree with that?
Agreed. 100%.
I mean, I would say that honestly, I'm having more conversations now, thankfully, with buyers than I ever did. I'm having buyers contact me further out, which is wonderful. I had buyers contact me last year. Chris, we think we want to buy next year, and we just want to get the conversation started. That's like A+. Okay, guys, like, good job. You're doing what you need to be doing. But if you're calling up Todd or you're calling up me and saying, "Oh, I want to go buy a house this weekend," we'll do our best to help you, but you're not really setting yourself up for success.
Well, and I think the thing that we all have to keep in mind is that we have become such a social and such a news-driven population that opinion is not fact. Even when you're dealing with the top economist in the world, they are making educated overviews of where they think and what things are going to happen. If somebody knew the answers, number one, it would be like, okay, there you go. There's the Yoda of the economic world, right? And if not, you just have to be, if we can see just common sense in some things and help people understand and empower them to make those decisions based on some sort of reality versus a Google. That's not a knock on Google because there is content galore there, but there's also a forum for opinion. Right.
Yeah.
And so, that's the things that we all have to be careful of. You're right, is when more and more people are getting ahead of this curve, more so than they ever have since I remember 26 years of finance, is that people want to make sure they're prepared now. And they have to be prepared going into a market where there's little inventory and there's a whole bunch of them wanting to buy. Right.
That's right. Right. Yeah. You've got to do things the right way. We've talked about that before. Todd, you and I held a workshop for buyers earlier this year where we talked about that. And if you don't know what you need to do, ask questions, and we're happy to point you in the right direction. But it's important that you understand these things. So I'm going to kind of go back real quick one time and look at once more at these numbers. I'm going to show market time. Okay. So if we look at the time homes are sitting on the market, we are at 31 days a year ago. And we sunk down really low. I mean, this is how long it takes a home to sell. Okay. So we sunk down last summer. I mean, look at these average days on the market, 6 days, 7 days. We're back up to 17. Okay. So it's, homes are taking a whole 10 days longer now to sell than they did back in August. But still, year over year, that number's cutting about half, 45%.
Let's talk about that. Don't lose the image, because where you saw houses on the market at 7 days also was the lowest points of interest rates we've ever seen in history. Mm-hmm. There was that anxiety. I got to do this, or I'm going to lose out on that opportunity. And this is the very thing that we need to talk about is, as you see on that curve, as things start moving up interest rates rise, so does the length of days on market. Yeah. Which means that we don't maybe have 30 offers per house, maybe we're down to 10 or 15, right? Yes. And I think that's the conversation, as interest rates are number one in our conversation right now, right? What's going to happen with them? Yeah. And the reality is, as long as interest rates continue to tick up a little bit, all it's doing is slowing down the market. It's slowing down this way of being able to say, if I don't do it now, I lose.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's not a win or lose. Is this what you want? Right? And there's no need to settle, but I think people got into that idea of, I may need to settle just because if not, I'm not going to get what I want. Right?
Yeah.
And I think that this is the perfect illustration of showing when interest rates start to come back to a little bit of reality, it also slows down the market, which will then start creating inventory, which then will allow more buyers to buy what they really want rather than settling.
And you know what's interesting? I just had this conversation with someone the other day. Right now, we're kind of chicken and the egg. It's this like vicious cycle of people are, you know, some people are going, okay, there's no houses out there, so I don't want to sell my house because I'm not going to find anything, you know. So then there's no houses out there, so you know it continues, right? And what everybody, a lot of folks do get a little freak out about the interest rates, and they go, man, oh man, you know, interest rates are rising. Well, for those of you who are ready to you know, rock and roll right now, you're still sitting at historic, you know, it's not the lowest they've ever been, but in light of history, they're still very low. You know, and for anybody who didn't lock in yet, and you can, I don't know, maybe lock in today, because from what I saw, the rates took a small little, you know, a little dip down in light of the conflict worldwide and things like that. But still, to your point, it's going to be good overall for the market when things rise up a little bit, because it is going to make it a little less frenzied. And I mentioned before that things lag. So right now, I mean, if you're out there, like, you know, on the ground right now, bidding on houses, it's rough. I mean, I've been out there with buyers. There's lots of offers. You've got to get in quick. I just messaged an agent about getting my client into a house this weekend that's not even on the market yet. And she said, well, I'm booked through Friday, but I can get you in on Saturday. Yeah. I mean, so it is tight, but that will catch up. Yeah. So we talked about that lag. It's not going to happen right this second, but 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 weeks from now, that will start to catch up. You will start to see inventory loosen up a little bit. And that's a good thing for people who are looking.
It's totally a good thing. I mean, here's the thing with all of this is that in 2018, from January to December, rates went from 4 to 5%. In 2019, before all heck broke loose with our pandemic, rates were 4.5%. You know, when you look at rates today at just the lowest rate for the cheapest cost without people buying down rates, sure, if you're at a 4% or 4 1/8 or 3.875, that is so beyond great. But we all have short-term memories. If we have 72 days of rates in the twos, all of a sudden everybody thinks that's the norm. Yeah. Remember, that was government generated by us suppressing the interest rates to get everybody through a pandemic that was historically no one had seen, at least in our generation, right? Yep. So there's all kinds of things that go into that, but you're right, is even at interest rates at 4.5 is not bad. I remember when they were 10%. In 1982, they were 19% or 17%, whatever they were at that time. You know, and you know, when you start talking about how inflation impacts that, yes, the Federal Reserve has to somehow control inflation. And the way they do that is through raising what they call the short-term lending rate from bank to bank. That would affect short-term loans, mostly car loans or sport utility vehicles or whatever the case may be, right? But also in an indirect way, they do affect the interest rate market. But everybody needs to know, if the Fed says they're raising interest rates 0.25%, doesn't mean interest rates in homes are going up 0.25%.
It's not a 1-to-1 ratio.
No, it's not. Yeah. But it's the point is that if they don't do something like that, what's going to happen is that we're just going to see inflation continue to grow. And when inflation continues to grow, that's not a healthy thing either. Most are projecting inflation by 2024 should go from the 7.5 we're at, which is a historical high since 1982, down to 2.2% again. And just think about that as everything has a cause and effect. So we still have a supply issue. We still have an issue with ships sitting in the ocean. We don't have people to get them off, and we don't have truckers delivering them, right? So there is a real to all of this, but it's kind of like a domino, right? One falls for the bad, it seems to fall for the bad and the long. And if one starts falling for the good, it starts improving everything. That's the way our economy's always worked. So what we're going through right now is not a negative. It's just the reality is where have we ever seen ourselves where there is so many people that want to buy, we don't have the inventory, right? And you got to realize that there was some cautiousness with sellers coming out of a pandemic thinking, do I really want to sell my house in a pandemic? Number one. And number two is, do I want to sell the house I've had for 25 years and move into a smaller house for the same price?
And there's still that issue right now.
Right.
Even though we've been coming out of the pandemic for a year, and finally governments are admitting that, and
right,
but there's still that fear. People like, what am I going to do?
It's going to cycle through. It always has. It always will. It's a cycle. And this is not a negative cycle. It's just a cycle of reality. It's just different than all the rest. That's all it is. And if you seriously are looking to buy or seriously looking to sell, there's going to be homes to buy and there's going to be homes to sell. It doesn't mean there's not going to be a little bit of aggravation going with it because you're competing for it, but that will soon go away too at some point, right? It's just a matter of time.
And I want to address kind of two things that you hinted at, so number one, am I going to buy a house that's smaller and more expensive or whatever? People are wondering like, I'm buying at the height of the market. Well, number one, if you're selling at the height of the market. Yeah, then you're going to buy at the height of the market. It's a wash, right? So it's like anything financially, you don't get hurt on the roller coaster unless you jump off, right? So you got to ride that wave. So if you're going to sell now and you're going to buy, and if things go down price-wise, and again, that's a big if. There's, knock on wood, okay, there's almost no chance that happens in the next 3-6 months. Could it happen? Could prices actually go down in the future? It's possible, but number one, we've got to catch up the inventory first. So more than likely what you're talking about is things they'll just soften a bit. And what that means is the rate of increase will slow. So, instead of, we had a 15% increase in value from last year, January 2021 to right now. So will it be a 15% increase till January 2023, February 2023? Maybe not. Maybe that'll slow to 7% or 8%. Will things go down? Maybe. What I would do, again, number one, try to plan for long-term strategy, just in life in general, right? If you're going to buy a house, I wouldn't buy a house and plan to sell it in 2 years. That's generally not a great financial move, because you're going to have expenses, involved in that sale. So if you're going to buy a house, plan to hold it for 3 to 5 or more years. If you are going to, people talk to me about buying new construction. You're going to buy new construction, better hold it for longer, because the shine wears off. It's not new anymore. And that's going to not be worth the same as if if there was a brand new house. So you've got to make smart choices, but it doesn't mean that you just freeze up and do nothing, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, and just think of it as a home is investment, right? And you're investing your money into something. And when you invest your money into real estate, I mean, that's not a negative thing, but it's like buying a stock. You don't buy a stock to sell it next month unless you're a trader.
Right.
If you had your money in your 401k and you just kept contributing to it over the course of 20 years, do you think there's anything that wouldn't tell you that it's going to be worth more? It's never not happened.
That's right. That's right.
So that's the way you got to kind of look at this big picture. If you're looking to get in and out, then that's a whole nother conversation.
Yeah, then you're right. Then that's not really home buying. That's investing.
That's right.
That is a different conversation. So if you're an investor out there and you're looking at where things are at, yeah, let's have a conversation, and it's a different conversation.
Completely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The other thing about, you mentioned inflation, there's people who are worried about, oh, well, what if rates go up a little bit? Well, what about inflation? Like we need to get that under control. And so, so people say, well, I'm worried, it cost me a tiny bit more in interest, to buy a home now than it did in August. Yeah. Well, look at all the money sitting in your savings account right now that's worth less than it was a year ago because of inflation. So that we have to get that as a country, we have to get that under control. And all of life will be better when we do.
Well, and I think a great conversation topic for you is when people look at it from that standpoint, is real estate's an inflation hedge.
Right.
You're making money on real estate in an inflation environment, not in sitting in your savings account.
That's right.
So that is a great conversation. Maybe we should have the next time, is how does that actually work, and how does that seem to be a better solution to change and maybe flip the storyline?
Yeah, absolutely. You're right. So, I mean, I think the good news, and just to underscore one thing we can say, is that if you're a homeowner in Naperville, I mean, that's what this podcast is all about. Your home values are great right now. And this, I want to touch on what you said too, or at least you jogged my memory to say this. If you're going to be buying a home right now and you are concerned about where are you putting your money, Naperville's a great place to put it.
Yes, it is.
I mean, the values here, and that's not to say anything about surrounding suburbs. Certainly, Todd and I help folks buy all around the Chicagoland area.
Yep.
But for those of you who listen to this podcast because you're interested in living in Naperville, or if you do live in Naperville, it's a good place to put it. There's, obviously business is open and happening here every single day. The entertainment and art scene is fantastic. The schools are highly rated. So if you're gonna plan on, okay, where can I put my money that it'll, as a little bit of a hedge in case there is some future issues, I'll tell you what, that's where my money is. So I can definitely recommend it to anybody who wants to.
Yeah. Always remember, some of the greatest wealth in the world is built through real estate.
That's right. That's right. And if it wasn't a family friendly show, I would play a Snoop Dogg clip that I heard the other day about that. But you can look at my Instagram for that one. Hey, real quick before we say goodbye, I just want to give a plug for this podcast in general. Todd and I are going to be doing this once a month, and I want to just show you, just no audio, but just kind of a clip of my most recent podcast episode that I did with Paul Serino. So Paul is a paleontologist and an archaeologist and an explorer who grew up here in Naperville. There's an amazing story in this podcast that he shares about his experience growing up in Naperville. And then, oh yeah, by the way, the fact that he's traveled around the world and discovered, dozens of dinosaurs and discovered the largest civilization find in the Sahara Desert, predating the Egyptians. So it's an amazing conversation. Wow. Yeah, I mean, you can find that on the YouTube channel, youtube.com/Chris Grano. It's on the same place that this episode will be found on all podcast platforms, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Spotify. Todd, thanks for joining me today.
You're welcome.
And we'll be back here for the April monthly market update.
Bye, everybody.
I'm excited. Take care, guys.